Welcome back, everybody. Well, the teardrop guitar is out, and 99 times out of 100, that means we're going to do some early era Rolling Stones, and we are. It's All Over Now by the Rolling Stones. And they released their version in 1964, just a few months after the original version that was put out by a group called the Valentinos. And so the Stones' interpretation by far, I think, is the most recognized and most popular. I'm going to go through the guitar parts that are on there. There's some sneaky little things in here. So yeah, I'm going to break all that down. So if this is the kind of thing that you like and you haven't done so yet, please jump down, click subscribe, ring the bell. The bell tells you when I drop new content. I do that every single week. All my videos have chapters in them, so you can jump right to the part of the lesson that you want to see and bypass what you don't. And if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, I appreciate that. There's thanks, like throwing a tip in the tip jar, or even better, you can join my Patreon page where I've got chord charts and tabs for all the lessons I do on YouTube, just like this one. Links in the description, so check it out. All right, so it's all over now. So there's sort of conflicting and not great information in terms of what exact instruments were used on the recording. I think it's figured out that Brian probably did not use his teardrop guitar on the recording, because I think he got it after they actually did the recording. Anyway, they believe they recorded all this in the Chess Studios. I'm going to do all the 6-string parts on this guitar, whether it's Keith or Brian. So there's even a 12-string in here, just a little bit. So we're going to touch on that too. But let's start with what I believe is actually, I'm going to call it Keith's part, okay? When they play it live, Keith Richards seems to play this part I'm going to go over right now. Even though it's sort of rhythm arpeggio. So I'm going to call this Keith's part, and this is the sort of foundation that runs throughout the entire song, okay? So all the details of my signal chain is going to be in the description below. For this part, what I'm calling Keith's part, I'm going to go to my neck pickup for this. We're in standard tuning, and got a very clean tone. So what's happening here is there's 4 chords that do the intro for what Keith is playing, okay? And those chords are G, F, C, with the G on the bottom, I think, and a D. And I'm playing the A in there with the D. So right, Cowboy C and Cowboy D. And very strong, what he does is he's hitting the root note first, and then he's picking an arpeggio after. So something like that. Whoops. Keep messing up on that D. So, right, so you're sort of hitting the root and fifth pretty hard. Is how that picking goes, right? And that sort of arpeggio on the top is sort of jumping over to, it's the 3rd string, I think, and then 1st, 2nd, 3rd. And if you hit the 4th string first, it's okay, but just that vibe is root, da-na-na-na, root, da-na-na-na, root, da-na-na-na, root, da-na-na-na. And if you sort of don't pick it exactly between the strings, it's okay. You're going to get that vibe. Right? Sounds a lot like it, right? I almost think it was the teardrop, but I think it's established that it is not on the record. Okay. So then during the verse, it's just an arpeggio holding down on the G chord. And he's not really playing the low notes. He's really concentrating on those strings 4 through 1. can play around with that a little bit, but that's definitely the vibe. It's that sort of all the way through. And Used to Love Her on the chorus, you're just carrying it on with the regular chord. I'm even out of tune like Keith. That's really, he does that the entire way. So that's the bed that lays down underneath almost all parts of the song. It doesn't do it during the guitar solo, but all the other parts, that's the sort of foundation that's holding it all together, which I think is very cool, but very clean. I used to. Okay, so that's really that for the foundation. All right, so now let's talk about Brian's parts. Brian, I believe, has these intro parts. By all accounts, he's the one that's playing these sort of leads that are happening. And if you watch on the Tammy Show, famous video where he actually is playing this guitar, when they're playing this live, Brian is playing the sort of this riff that we're going to talk about, and Keith is playing that arpeggio part. So you think that's what happened on record? We're going to learn in a little bit that Brian also, or somebody, I'm going to call it Brian, is playing a 12-string guitar on this. There is a 12-string part. It only comes up sort of during the verses, and then it's sort of brought down in the mix during all the other parts. And I believe this part we're going to learn and that 12 are just doubles of each other. So he's on 12 doubling what I'm going to show you here on 6. I'm going to break out the 12 and we'll look at that together too. So the riff. So it's a call and response between what Keith is doing and now what Brian is going to do. Remember, Keith hits that really hard. He hits the bass strings on each one of those chord changes. Brian is playing an answer to that. Brian's not playing that. He's not hitting that. So while Keith does that, what Brian's part is, and then Keith's next part is, right? So he hits that G and C. Brian's next part is, right? So slowly again. Idea whether there's upstrokes or downstrokes. I'm just trying to emphasize that everything that you're hitting is on these 6th, 5th, and 4th strings, okay? So I'm going to hit that low note, which is really Keith hitting it, but let me play it with that together. It sort of pulls it together. Not sure what pickup. I'm on the middle doing that. That seems a little too twangy to me. But you can hear it's like really up in the mix and they wash it with reverb and everything. Okay, now during the verses, this is where you hear the 12-string come up in the mix. And I'll talk about that in just a sec. He's probably still playing a 6. He probably does a take with the 6 all the way through. And I'm going to guess that he's doing the same thing that the 12-string is doubling, which is bit of a stretch for the pinky, right? That's it. And if you want, you can just give up the G note. another easier way you can do it to get that little riff. But then on the chorus, so the key on those is that you're always hitting a, it's so a D chord, but you're always hitting the A. You're hitting the 6th and 5th string and 4th string together. Right? Right. Now, during the guitar solo, what Brian's playing during the guitar solo is just a straight up, old time rock and roll. I like to play, I'm not going to do the stretch. I just hit that open, or not open, 3rd fret. I just sort of emphasize that. It's not perfect every single time. It's, when he plays it, it's rock. But the thing is, with his approach, it's very much like very white. It's very white sounding to me. You can do the same thing to your C. You can play it in either position. Or back to G. D. Or either way. C. Back to G. And then it settles back into the little less frantic during the verses. And then the out is just repeats of. All the way through the fade out. So that's that part. Let's actually look at what that sounds like for those little parts on 12 string that sort of sneak into the mix as well. So also in this mix is a 12 string guitar that Brian had. Don't know what kind of guitar or what model 12 string or whatever at the time. But you can clearly hear it elevate in the mix during the verses. And it's this, we learned that the 6th string part is doing this. Right? But you always hear that octave. And not only do you hear the octave there, but you also do hear it on the, every once in a while you'll hear that sneak in. And you hear the octave string on it. So I really think that's a 12 string part. Some guys have been able to sort of find a way to do that on a 6 string where you do. And it's close. Obviously I'm playing on a 12 right now, but so if you got a 6, that's another way to do it. So on the 12, I believe he's playing it in this position. But you're not hearing that note. He's really emphasizing the high note. So I just think he's doing. So it's not so much the rock and roll. It's not really that. It's. You can definitely hear that G note being picked with the octave on it, and then that little pickup onto it. But I just think that's all that's happening, and that's all. He may have played this whole thing, done a take, the whole thing with a 12, but this is really what is elevated in the mix during the verses that you hear, which sort of gives it that characteristic sound. Yeah, so all the other parts. let me know in the comments if you think you hear the 12 more than in that little spot. You know, maybe he played it on the intro. Hard to tell. He probably doubled. That's my theory anyways, that he doubled, almost doubled sort of the same part of his 6-string part all the way through. And you know, that's the part that sort of stood out more in the mix during the verses. Anyway, that's what I'm going with. All right, let's check out the lead guitar. Okay, then there's Keith Richards playing the lead. And this is just straight up like heavy Chuck Berry influenced early time rock and roll leads. That's what this is. And he's very much just playing in the box. Okay. So the lead that he's going to play, it's all built around the basic G minor sort of pentatonic box, or where Chuck Berry likes to riff a lot, and I know Keith loved all that. So there's a lot of double stops. And the other thing that happens all over this lead is there's no pull-offs. It's like they didn't, I'm sure he knew how to do pull-off. I'm sure he knew how to do it, but he didn't do it. And it's very pronounced. He never does, he does. It's all, everything is very much picked individually. It may just be me that thinks it's funny, but I think it's funny. Anyway, so here's where he's sort of going with that. He's just starting with a double stop. It's all in that sort of box set. Man, this sounds like old time rock and roll. That's not note for note. All my Patreon members will have everything perfectly note for note there, but I'm going to give you the almost note for note and vibe here for the lesson, because it's just so cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy, right? So the way I like to think about it is the first two sort of go-arounds on the G. Loosely, he's building around this idea. Right. Like that kind of thing, right? So that's all, just play around in that box. And every once in a while, that sort of is pronounced at the end of each phrase. When the chord change goes to C, he's just gonna riff around that double stop, like in every way possible. There's more of that. Now he's gonna go up to the sort of B.B. King blues box. Call that the House of Blues because it's the little house shape, right? Around your G note. But here's another example where he doesn't do the pull off, right? Right? There's no pull off. It's not. It's. It's so funny sounding to me. Back to your G. Do a couple more of those. And then on your turnaround chord, you're going to do this. So, see what I mean? There's not a whole lot to it. But it totally, obviously fits the song, and it's just old-time, early rock and roll, right? Keith Richards' early old-time rock and roll, right? Greatness. All right, well, that was It's All Over Now by the Rolling Stones, and I hope you learned something new today. So if this is the kind of thing that you like and you haven't done so yet, please jump down, click subscribe, ring the bell. The bell will tell you when I get new content out there. I do that every single week. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this, and if there's another lesson you want me to take on and do something similar, let me know what that is too. But until next week, take care, everybody.